because it's not coming up. Is it recording? It's recording. And hello and welcome to the XStreamed Chat Podcast here on the Extreme Improv XStreamed YouTube channel, and also available anywhere where you can listen to podcasts. So that's like iTunes and Google Podcasts, Spotify, and all this kind of thing. So make sure you subscribe on any of those, all of those in fact, if you want to give it a listen. But if you want to give it a watch, then head over to the Extreme Improv YouTube channel and maybe on Facebook or something. I don't know. Anyway, my name is David Pstansky, and I'm very excited to have the very wonderful, very talented, very special guest. Well, in fact, he couldn't make it. So instead, we have... No, I'm joking, of course. We have our actor, improviser, like all kinds of things. I'm sure we're going to learn a lot. Wrestling,
it, I think.
wrestling fan, wrestling fanatic. You do sciencey things with like fire and stuff. I've seen photos. I'm sure we'll get into all of this and so much more. It is Dave Green. Hello, Dave.
Hello.
Is it Dave or David? Because I feel like I completely get into the habit that you're Dave and I'm David, but it's David, isn't it?
It's weird. It's weird with my with my name, because I don't know if you get this sometimes, that just some people call you Dave and then other people just like, no, you're David.
Yeah,
so
I have the same.
I'm David to my family. No one calls me David to my family at all. I'm always David to everyone, from my parents to my aunties to my cousins and my sister and everything. I am David. No, nothing else. But I think just Dave is just... I don't know. I don't know if I suit a Dave. Do you know what I mean? It's like everyone knows someone called Dave, and they're like, "Oh, Dave's this and Dave's that," and I'm like, "Hello, I'm Dave," and it's like it doesn't work with me somehow. But yeah, it does kind of work, if you know what I mean. It's like it's really them. So yeah, I've just been called just Dave Green on here and on improv comedy shows and things. But officially I'm David Anthony Green.
Oh, there you go.
The actor, for what that is worth, you know. And yeah, it's always been a bit of a weird thing. I've always not been comfortable with the people always say, "Oh, what do you prefer?" And I'm like, and I never prefer either. You know, I'm always saying, "Oh, no, it's up to you." And
like there must be some names where they never experience. Those people go through life. Like if someone's name was like Luke, you know, they're like, "Oh, what do you prefer, Lucas?" It's like, well, that's just not my name. It's Luke. You know, but
prefer Luke or Luke.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, like I think mostly I get called David, but my sister definitely always calls me Dave, or at least I think so. But more than that, it's one of these things where when people say, "What do they call you?" I'm like, I don't know. Like I don't really retain what different people call me.
As long as the 4-letter word you're going to call me is Dave, I'm happy.
Well, there you go. So, Dave. It's interesting, actually, because one other thing, just to stick on, this is an interesting discussion just about names at the moment, but because I've done a fair bit of teaching, like there is no one from a younger generation. I've done teaching for about 10 years. I have never taught a David. Like, is the name just going out? Because like it feels like there's quite a few. Just doing extreme improv, we come across at least a few different Davids.
Yeah.
And I don't know, do you come across many Davids?
It's always, not really, because there's a lot of my other work does involve school work and parties and things like that, so school parties. And yeah, there are times I do come up with a David, I'm always like, David, good name, or things like that to them. But yeah, now you mention it, there's a lot. There's certain names that are just like you just don't hear anymore. So I think whenever I write down sort of, in my parties, I do science parties, and a lot of the time we make slimes, we do little pots of slime and things like that. And at the end of the parties, towards the end, I always put their name on their pot so that they don't lose it or anything like that. And you get some names that come up that are quite regular and things like that. And you get a lot of I've noticed a lot of Ethans coming out there just lately and things like that. And there's obviously some names I'm not as familiar with, so I'll always ask them to spell it. And these days, the kids are always told to spell by going D, A, E, I, U, the. And I'm like, can you just say the letter?
Yeah.
Because if you say E, I'm going to assume it's an E when they actually mean it's an I, and or a K or a curly K, which is quite funny.
Curly K, and what's the other one? A kicking K.
Kicking K. Okay, I've never heard that one.
All right, I think that's like a K is a kicking K, And then
I always thought,
curlica is a C.
yeah, well, I always thought curly cur was just for the curtain, and the cur was just for
Oh, okay.
But yeah, that's what I assumed. But no, yeah, got them to ask. But yeah, but no, I do notice sometimes when I get a name that is from like a bygone generation. So like my one of my grandparents was called Evelyn. And Evelyn, yeah, and yeah, someone came, was called Evelyn, and I was like, oh my god, that's I've not heard that name for like
Yeah.
like that outside, just as a full name, just saying,
Yeah.
not sure what breed, obviously, but
Well, yeah, I was going to say,
Ivy as well. It's
I
like,
have
wow,
the name Evelyn's in my family as well, and I have a sister Eve. So there you go.
yeah. So it's weird how a lot of them come around. I've yet to find a child in any party that's been called Nigel.
Wow. I have a cousin called Nigel as well. Like, yeah, I'm like, there's something about the name Nigel which anyone Nigel's watching, but like Nigel, I don't know.
Yeah.
There's something about people called Nigel where it's there's a bit
Baby
unusual.
Nigel. It doesn't work. Baby Nigel just doesn't
Baby
sort of
Nigel.
work.
I always thought like that's like the weirdest name to name a cat or something. What's your cat's name? Nigel. Just
I was wanting to call I've got two cats since I moved in with my fiance, and she obviously had named them before I moved in. But I think if we do get a cat, I'm going to try and I would like to call my cat Iggy.
Iggy.
After Improv. I think that's a good name.
Okay, that is a good name. That is a good name. I think with a pet name, like a lot of them end up with like the Y on the end, like the E sound. It's good to be able to call like, Holly or Lucy or something like this.
Yeah, but then those names suddenly go into other names as well. So, like, for instance, my cats are Harry and Bobby, and just out of just coming out with unusual things, so we'll come out with unusual names for them. So, like, one of my favourite pet names for Bobby is just called Bobsicle. Why?
Well, okay, Dave, you'll appreciate this one. As a wrestling fan, years ago, my family had a dog. Her name was Lucy. I ended up calling her, like, just something got said once. I ended up calling her Hoovy. So she ended up becoming Hooventude. And I'd be like, Hooventude, come here. Like, Hooventude Guerrera. And that's, like, the most random, like, chain of, like, how did the name end up as that? Well, Lucy, it sounded a bit like Hoovy when it was said once. And then, yeah, it evolved.
I hope she doesn't start answering that when she's like, you've got some old WCW in the background, and suddenly you just hear
Hooventude.
Hoovy. And you're like...
Well, yeah, absolutely. Wow, amazing. So Dave, let's. What would you like to talk about?
Anything you want.
Anything I want.
Stuff to do the sciencey stuff or the improv stuff.
Oh, let's start with some sciencey stuff. Teach me some science.
Oh well, yeah. Well, we're gonna hit a brick wall quite early there. So no, I did. So I've done some science work for like since 2012. No, at the end of 2012, I sort of got a call or a message from a friend of mine who'd done a play with year before, and she's working for this company, and said, "Oh, are you looking for some extra work in the next year?" And seeing as I spent most of 2012 with absolutely nothing, I went, "Yes, please." So start 2013, I started working for a company, and one of their bases was in near Braintree in Essex, and no good enough journey for me, and just doing little workshops and things like that, and just learning little bits of science stuff here enough to teach a class with, and things like that. So everyone always says, "Oh, what sort of science do you teach?" I'm like, I don't know, because a lot of the times because I've been working quite consistently with it since then, with that company and with other companies since, and you go into schools and you like do assemblies and you're setting like things like go pow bang, or you're throwing or you're hovering balloons and balls and things like that in the air with these giant like lawnmower leaf blower things and all that sort of stuff. So it's stuff that the kids would enjoy. It's stuff that if I had seen that in my assemblies, I'd be like, "Wow, I really want to do science. This is amazing."
Yeah.
This is the whole point. And so you get to do that sort of stuff where you just learn a sort of set thing. It's like learning a script. You just set this.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
You set this sort of stuff to learn and to how to produce. But then sometimes you get some questions back at you if you're doing. So I used to do after school clubs with the first science company I worked for, and you get your set work sort of kit for the week and that, and you do the stuff. And sometimes you the worst thing I had sort of happened to me a lot of the time was, you get to a certain point where if you've done all the stuff you're meant to do and you've got a little bit of time, so you're like, okay, any questions? You kind of think, hopefully it's not going to be anything too difficult. And so
Yeah.
they'll ask something about this and something about that. And then you get some sort of existential question about the universe and all this sort of stuff. We got asked a question once in a summer school thing. We did like a summer camp thing for the science stuff, and this child was like a really, really sweet kid, and there, but he was a bit confused with some of the stuff that I was explaining about. We were particularly looking at nature and animals and things like that in this particular one, and he suddenly went. I was talking about how the laws of the universe sort of work and all this sort of stuff, and how everything sort of comes together and makes everything work around us, and things live and breathe and all that sort of stuff. And then this kid just instantly went, "But doesn't God create all that?" And I was like, and I very like, luckily a colleague of mine was with me as well, but she just sort of looked at me and went, and just I was sort of like, "I'll take this one, okay, fine." And I sort of went in this little thing of like saying, well, a lot of people like believe in certain things, and that's certainly something. So if people choose to believe that sort of thing, what I'm saying here is just something that I happen to think is the correct way of that it works and things like that. But some other people might not believe that. As God is now vengeful, knocking my microphone over.
Do you know, Dave, I think I'd just be like, it's magic. Just magic does it,
Yeah,
it's just magic.
Exactly right.
And it'd be like, I'd just be like, God gives us the magic to do the science or something like this. Wow, that's
a whole different area there.
Okay, this is going to sound like a weird segue, but like, bear with me. Do you know the show Breaking Bad?
Uh-huh.
Right. Okay. So I'm not suggesting that what you do is like that, but if you remember Breaking Bad, it's like
that would be a very, very different science.
That'd be like a segue out of this. So yeah, like on the weekends we take the kit home. No, but what do you remember? There's like one of the series of Breaking Bad where Jesse Pinkman is taken to like Mexico or somewhere, and they're like, right, show us your methods, and he can't make the first chemical because he only knows the bit he did.
Yeah.
So it's like, you do all these things, flames come up, bubbles, slime. They're like, oh yeah, so what's in that thing that goes in the slime? You're like, it just comes in a packet.
The most worrying question I get from a lot of kids and from parents as well is, oh, can I get that sort of stuff? Where can you get that from? And I always have to say it's from my secret science lab, I'm afraid. And I'm like, I can't tell you. This is stuff I've already said. You can't really try this stuff unless you're trained.
Yeah, absolutely. So don't try it at home.
Yeah, exactly. So we're very, very clear on that method. But yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff that I've been able to learn how to do, like setting these flammable bubbles on fire in my hand is like a particularly.
I think I've seen a photo of that specifically.
Yeah. First time I ever had to do that, it was a brand new sort of thing, and the first time I ever had to do that, I was out of school and it was a class, and I was hoping that I could get a bit of time to practice it and all that sort of stuff. It was, like I say, a brand new class for me. It's all to do with fire and different types of different ways of it existing and how creating it and getting rid of it and all that sort of stuff. And I got to this one school, and the person that was at reception, and I'm sure anyone who's done these sort of things at schools, or indeed have done like Pantos or TIE at school and things like that, the first thing you do when you get to the schools and you have the reception people, not the reception class, rather, sorry, the ones in the office, I mean.
Sure.
The lady in the office, first thing you get there, if they are just not on top of things, then it can be a very, very long morning for you. So I was left in this sort of office, just sort of waiting around, and my car was outside. I hadn't taken anything out yet, and I was sort of waiting. And basically, it got to the point where I'd waited about 40 minutes before I sort of finally found the lady again and just said, "Can I go to this classroom now?" And they said, "Oh yes, of course," and as if they just suddenly forgot. And I got in there, and the class were already in there. So I was like,
oh, wow.
Right, okay. So I was setting things up while the first sort of class were having their registration and everything. And I was like, okay, this is going to be interesting. So I couldn't do any practice at all. So the first time I did that trick was in front of people. And I was like, I really hope this works. I don't set fire to the school or myself.
Yeah.
Luckily, didn't tell the tale. So
that'd be amazing. Like, Mummy, I went to school today. What happened, Timmy? Well, this man came in and spontaneously combusted. You know.
He said he had flammable bubbles, and suddenly they were everywhere.
Yeah. It was when he started screaming on the floor we realised something may be wrong.
Yes, I forgot to give them the signal. If anything goes wrong and I go, ah, that's not it's not part of the script.
So, what is that the coolest trick that you do? Or trick or science? Is it? It's not.
That's the most dangerous one I do outside of the hydrogen balloon, which is quite an interesting one.
That sounds quite flammable, right?
Oh, it is. Yeah. So the idea is that you've got this 3 balloons. You do one of them full of air, one of them with carbon dioxide, which you make from mixing some bicarbonate soda with some white vinegar, and put that on top of a flask, and it fills up the balloon only a little bit. It's not like a massive or anything like that, but they always sort of show them the difference between the 2 balloons by if you let the 2 balloons go, the one with air and one with carbon dioxide, let them go. The one with carbon dioxide on its own goes to the floor much quicker. It's a heavy gas, you see. But when you make up the hydrogen balloon, and just for public safety, I'm not going to say how you do it.
Yeah, sure.
In case anyone's watching this going, ah. But no, you make up the hydrogen balloon, and you tie them all up and everything like that, and then the idea of the presentation at that point is that you now then say to the kids, right then, we're going to see how this is how they react to being held over a candle. So you light the candle up, you've got a pole and things like that attached to the end of the pole. Put the one over the air one, pop, as you expect it. The one with the CO2 goes over there. They'll either go pop or it'll go and just have a little hole in there and just peter out. So it won't quite do a huge amount because it's not flammable. But when you put the hydrogen balloon over the top of it, and I've seen ones that are quite small and some ones that are quite big. I tend to go for the smaller one because the big ones are likely to go really, really big. But you hold it over the candle for a moment, you give them a little bit of a warning, everyone's waiting for a moment, and suddenly, pow! And then it'll be very, very quick, very, very sudden. And what hopefully happens is that not only do you get a really big bang, which all the kids go, whoa, like at the end of it, but the candle hopefully will still be alight.
Wow.
As well, which is always quite cool.
That is very cool.
It's not a bad little bit. But you do get some that are just like things that just don't work. We had one where called what's the word? When police things when they're doing crime investigations and they're doing the DNA analysis. What's that called? Forensics.
Forensics. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So we had like a forensics class and things like that. And one person, someone came up with this idea of, let's do an experiment where it looks like you've made your own DNA and things like that from in this little test tube thing.
Okay.
And so I know
it sounds like it could go a bit dodgy there.
This could go a bit dodgy. So I can't remember exactly what the combination of things were, but the idea was that at the end of this you had this little dish, petri dish thing, and in there there's a layer of one liquid, and you've got another liquid. But you've also, and we get the kids to spit into the petri dish, so they've got their own DNA in there. So you get them to spit in there, which they all go ugh at first to do.
Yeah.
And then the idea is that these things mix together and all that stuff. And then as it's mixing together, you get these like little almost like gelatin sort of style type things, and almost like little like wormy sort of bits that come up in it.
Yeah.
And all the time. And that's supposed to be the DNA. That's what it's supposed to look like. It's scientifically doesn't make any sense. And it's not actually, it's not actually like your DNA or anything like that forming in this stuff. The idea was to do it. I could never get it to work. I didn't understand what was going on. So how the hell am I supposed to do to teach the kids how to do that? I don't know, but it's one of those things where like this is not really working, and we've since like given that a gosh.
Yeah. Oh, amazing. Have you ever had to do any of this kind of stuff or incorporate any of this or sunk into like performing on stage or like in film or anything like this?
Not yet. No, we've done a few bits. I mean, aside from doing a dinner show recently, which we were trying to give the idea that something was on fire in the kitchen, and all I did there was just bring a little smoke machine that I used for one of the science things, and that's all. That's not really a science thing. That's just
years ago I did a panto that we did it like it was weird. It was an outdoors open air panto at Halloween, and at Halloween, we called it Pantoween. It was terrible as a name, but there was a guy who was in it who did some like similar like sciencey parties kind of stuff, and I don't think we had flames, but we definitely had some sort of like slime or gunge that he could like conjure in front as part of it. And I was like, this is great. But yeah.
We did do something reasonably similar where we did combine a science show and a pantomime with the science company I mentioned, the first one I worked for. A good friend of mine, Andrew, was commissioned to put on this show, and it was going to be a science show and a pantomime. And it was all in conglomeration with Anglian Water company, and they wanted to do a show that was going to educate people on the effects of stuff gunking up your pipes, things like that, getting stuck in your pipes and things like that. So we were all there was 4 of us. We had the principal boy, principal girl, we had the villain, and we had the dame, me. And I'm happy being the dame. I've been the dame, been the villain. I was principal boy for 1 year when really there wasn't much other options, and and the comedian character and that sort of stuff. So I love doing pantomime. But, this particular one, we were going to do a few performances of it, but the whole thing was to sort of it was only a half-hour panto as well, and I was called Dame Flush, and it was a really well done, actually. Andrew did a really good job of what he'd written and did. But yeah, we did a few things where, like, we did a couple of sciencey things where it looked like we were creating like this gun stuff that came out, and really it was like what's called in the trade elephant's toothpaste, where it sort of comes up and mixes up and creates this sort of foam effect that goes on for ages and things like that, and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it was like, but we had to do, so it was all collaborated with Anglian Water to educate people about not putting like wipes down, like hand wipes and things like that down the toilet and things like that, because they don't dispose in there. But we had to do these promotion shots for it. So we went to, I think it was the Anglian Water headquarters up somewhere in North Suffolk or something like that. It's quite a little fair way away from where I am now, but. So it was me and the 2 other girls that made the principal boy and principal girl. We did it was a proper photo shoot in this nice little like area and things like that. Nice. And we're doing different poses and things like that, various poses. And one of the things, as you know, is we're being a dame. The dame has got lots of different wigs and headpieces and all that sort of stuff.
You didn't have flash paper, did you?
I didn't have flash paper, sadly. No, but I did have a toilet that was put on my head. I had this model toilet thing that was put onto the head, and I think they were hoping this was going to be part of like the costume as well. It could not be part of the costume because it was so bloody heavy that if I moved even slightly, it was just going to go fall over. And it's I can't remember what the plaster cast or something like that it was made of, and it was really good, but it was so heavy. So we did this one little section of the photo shoot with this particular bit, and we said afterwards, I said we can't do any more with that on, so I just won't be able to do any poses whatsoever for these other bits. So we switched to the other one, but there's somewhere out there in the Anglian Water Twitter page in their media section from 2015 or something like that, 15, 16, there are pictures of me in this costume with that toilet on my head. So if you can find them, good luck.
That's amazing. Like, it feels like you should have had like a dangly earring that was like the flusher.
I'm pretty sure there might have been.
Wow.
I'm not sure. I can't remember. But as I say, it wasn't fully working, thankfully.
Have you done, you like doing panto? Have you done many?
Done lots of pantos with a couple of companies that do like schools and community centres and things like that. So haven't done the big stage ones yet.
What's your favourite role to play? Like you said, dame, villain, comic.
Villain every day.
Villain
every day. Yeah, love playing the villain. Absolutely, just getting the kids to just. I once got such an angry reception from some kids in like the school ones that I've done over the years. There was one time where a kid just shouted at me so hard that his tooth fell out.
Wow.
I don't remember seeing it, but they were told afterwards that his tooth came out because he was shouting at me so much to go away.
Oh,
and I had
God.
one of the best sort of like things you can do with like the school touring pantos and things like that, because I think a lot of people think it's like a rung up the ladder and all that sort of stuff, and if that is the case, I stayed at that rung for quite a while. But it was, it was for all its sort of faults and things like that, and various stories that happened that maybe weren't so great. Most of the time, it was good fun to do. When you're out there and actually doing the shows, it's tremendous fun.
Yeah.
And when you so we've been to sort of special needs schools before quite a few times, and we were at one where I think it mostly was for behavioural difficulties and things. And we did a production. I was in a production of Beauty and the Beast. I was Gaston.
Cool. Amazing.
And I wasn't like the Gaston in the Disney version, believe me, quite the opposite. But it was a fun show to do, I think. And we did a little thing where we came out at the end to have a little line up so the kids could come up and shake hands and say hello and all this bits and pieces. And one of the girls that came up, she was quite tall, quite big, and things like that, quite a strong looking girl. She came up to me and she went, "You were nasty," and punched me full force in the chest. And she did it with a massive smile on her face. And though she didn't actually mean it to be like horrible, it was more like going, "Oh, you nasty thing." But no, just went straight in my chest, completely winded me. And
wow.
While the others were trying to hold their laughter, which they didn't hold when they got backstage and got changed, they were just my tour manager came to me and went, "Sorry, Dave, I know you probably heard, but that was the funniest thing I've seen in ages."
Amazing.
So
wow.
It's but kids are the most honest audience, though. If they like something or they're getting involved, they really do get involved.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. I've definitely played on like this on some of like the very like smaller things, or even like on one of these Halloween things. I've definitely been the villain. I don't know that I've got to be the villain. I've been Dame a couple of times, but usually I'm like comic lead, and that's always fun. But there was one I did a few years ago where I got the whole audience to boo me when I was the comic lead, because there was something, and it was Dick Whittington, and there was something where someone sort of like, "Oh," in the audience like that. And I just like turned around. I was like, "Hang on a second." I was like, and I just went to him. It was like penultimate night. I was like, "I never get to be booed. Did you just boo me?" I was like, "Let's go for it if you're going to go for it." And there was like boo like this, and I was like really taking it in. And I was like, that is fun. But I've never really got to be the villain like that.
The villain come back out and say, "You stole my thunder, you bastard."
Do you know what? Like, no, not at all. Not at all. Like during that particular run, there was from show to show. I was going crazy with the improv, because when you're touring one of these shows, you have to keep yourself energized and entertained as much as possible. But there was one of them where one of the audiences, I just decided I'm going to do this whole show with an Australian accent. And so I adapted everything to like "Good day, kids" and whatever else. And I'll tell this story now. It'd be amazing if the person who would remember this other half of the story. But apparently I said the word "sure" a lot during this tour, and it was irking the other actor. Sure. And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And they're like, "Sure," like this. I was like, "What?" They're like, "You say sure all the time, David." I was like, "Do I?" And I wasn't aware of it. So we'd got a whole routine which was based around of saying yes. So this time I came out on stage, it's like, "Will you watch this?" I was like, "Sure." She looks at me, she's like, "Sure." I was like, "Sure." And so I just changed it so the whole routine was just about the word "sure." Never heard another thing about it afterwards. But now I was the villain to her. But that was only just because apparently I was irking her by saying the word "sure," which I just thought was ridiculous. But
Just going back to wrestling a second, I just wondered if it was the thing of like the comedian suddenly just doing a little turn and making the audience go against him, and the villain suddenly is the comedian.
Well, like a double turn. Nah, like that didn't quite happen like that. But amazing. So
I had that. Sorry to interrupt. I had that a little while ago. The last time I got like interviewed for anything was on BBC Essex a couple of years ago, and it was to promote one of the dinner shows. I was doing a Fools and Horses dinner show in the county somewhere, and our director Stephen managed to like get an interview going for this one day to get some interest for it, and I went to do a little pre-record in the afternoon, and when listening back to it in the evening, and sadly I am one of these people who does actually listen and watch back stuff I've done for some reason.
Yeah, no, I love it.
But I listened back to it, and every time that she asked me something or said something and got to me to then say my piece, every time I did, I started off by saying "absolutely." And I said it absolutely every time.
Yeah.
Nearly, I think there was only one point where I didn't, but then I said absolutely like second or third word in. And I was like, oh, I didn't say it. Oh, I did say it. Every single time I came in and went, absolutely, yeah, the point is that I'm not going to
Yeah.
carry on. I was like, I'm driving myself mad. I
Yeah.
was like, how did she just get through this pre-record without editing that out every time? Going, oh my God, he's saying absolutely again.
So do you think you still do that, or is that just something you were just doing on that occasion?
Absolutely.
I tell you what, like I'll share this. I say the word so many times it's insane. Like when I've like especially doing the improv shows like at Extremed or whatever, I'll get to the end of a scene, I'll be like, so moving on, blah blah blah. So this, so that. And when I've recorded myself just to do like a voiceover thing, or even if I've written something that I then need to write to read out loud, I'm like, God, cut out some of the so's. I'm just like, so then this happens, so this and so that. It's like it's weird how you get into these habits, and sometimes you notice them yourself, sometimes I guess you don't.
So those things we in the improv shows we do with the Laughter Academy around here, we got a game that we start every showcase out with called Die Story, which I'm sure you're familiar with.
Yeah, absolutely.
And one of the things that our teachers always point out is when we say something like, say that the story is about, we had one the other week where it was a story about Adele going on a quest with someone, I forget who the other one was, but let's say that someone will say, Adele's decided to go on this quest, or something like that, and they always say, don't say decided to, they said they're going on this quest.
Yeah.
Things like that. And there was a point where on one showcase like a year or so ago that someone was going down the line, and they kept saying decided to this, decided to that. And it pointed out during the showcase in front of the audience, so like, right, this person says decided to is eliminated straight away from the game. Yeah. And it got to me. I went, Adele made the decision to carry on with this. And they go, but it just kept the finger on me the whole time until I just ran out of steam. I was like, nah.
Yeah. No, that's great. I love stuff like that. I love like when you're doing, well, you know, we can talk about some improv, but just like when you find that like funny idea where you can bring it back, you know, and it's just like, oh, okay, you've said this, and now that's a thing. Let's make it more of a thing, and you can build on it.
Yeah.
But Dave, like, you may have mentioned just before we started, actually, obviously, just this week at the time of recording, this should hopefully come out within like the next 2 weeks, like next week and a half. Like, I'll try to get these up quite quickly now. But I had Ashley Edwards, and I think I spoke to him about it, if I remember correct. You just did a show which was Laughter Academy Police Department, LAPD, if I've got the name correct. Tell us a little bit about how that came about. Was it one and done, or will the cops be back?
So I had an idea like about a year and a half ago. Just sort of, I can't remember what it was exactly that inspired it, but we've done a few shows and things like that where we play a lot of detective style games like Murder Interrogator or a Give Us Clue style game where you have to give clues to ruin house, murder weapon, all that sort of stuff. And so a lot of those sort of games. So I did just suddenly think to myself, well, if we just did an entire show that's based entirely on those sort of games, or we can mould into sort of like a police sort of theme. And so got in touch with a couple of people that ended up doing the show with, and just wanted people that really obviously could 100% rely on to be like really quality players of everything, and also contribute really, really nicely. That's so Ashley was obviously one of those. We also had Paul Sheenick and Jimmy Longhurst in the end doing the show with us, and yeah, it went really, really well in the end. We finally got it. Paul was just like, it sort of did a sort of field of dreams sort of moment with me, where he just said, look, let's just book the date, and then, you know, if you book it, they will come, that sort of thing.
Absolutely.
And so we had about 5, I think I booked about 5 weeks, so we did it at the beginning of November, and we had about 5 weeks to promote it and everything like that, and and we ended up doing sort of short form stuff at the start, where like we just tried to do some relatively sort of regular games, but give them the police twist and all that sort of stuff. And there's other things that obviously popped up in my head that I'm going to try it out with in the future. And the second half was going to be a long form based on audience suggestions that were made during the interval on pieces of paper. So it was going to be the case file of what ended up being the case of Barry White with the location of Belfair's golf course, which is a golf course in the Essex area,
Sure.
and the murder weapon being a light reflected off the top of Paul's head. Paul is a baldy man. He's a wanted us. But but so it ended up being that situation was the case of those three things happening, and then we did about half-hour, 40-minute improv, long form on that. And as actually said in the interview, there's plenty of structural sort of things we'll adapt and all that sort of thing. But no, we'll be back hopefully very soon. Get in touch with Caddies and their Lee, who runs the Laughter Academy, who does the booking for the comedy club there. And hopefully we'll be back, and it got really good. We got really good feedback from it. Really happy with it. So
awesome.
Yes, we'll be back hopefully at some point in the Southend area at Caddies in Southend with that. And we'll adapt as we go on. I've already got an idea for like a new one to do in there. Instead of like good cop, bad cop, we'll play good cop, emo cop, which will be like a different emotion as the other cop comes in every time with a different emotion. So that sort of thing. So it's I was really happy with it. Came off, we all dressed up in like got aviators and black and white sort
like
of
police shirt and tie. I think I saw some photos of it.
There's plenty up there. So if anyone wants to follow us with the LAPD Improv Police.
Improv Police.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So from that, let's talk a little bit more Laughter Academy, because for as long as I have known you, like in fact, how did I come to know you? Was it through James Little?
I think maybe it was
or independently.
Things, but I think I discovered you guys found it Extreme. I was finding companies to find them to work with, particularly. So I think I found you guys on Twitter or something and saw your videos and things like that. Thought it looked quite good fun. So I think I just got in touch and said anything coming up, and you happened to mention that you're doing some podcasts.
Yes, that's right.
Coming out. So I think I came up on my time hop the other day. It might have been about 3 years ago, just last week, in fact.
That's amazing.
We did that initial set of podcasts, and despite my performance in the first couple of shows, you had me back, so it was quite bizarre.
That's very cool. So that's just coincidence that James was also okay. We can talk about that. Interestingly, and this is a little thing the audience will hear it as well. May as well say, but you have said to me over like the last 3 years, evidently. It's like, David, I'm sure some episodes have never aired, right? I've definitely found all of the episodes that were ever recorded. So I'm going to make sure that all of them, like over the last month or so, I've been uploading like lots of old live archived recordings. So I have all of these. So they will be up if any didn't like sneakily come up in one of the festivals in the past. But okay, so how long have you been involved with the Laughter Academy, and was that the beginning of your improv journey, to say it in this very sort of like
I say properly it was
improv way?
I wanted to get into it like a long while ago. After I finished university in 2001, sorry.
Yeah.
2001, 2002, and I'd done a comedy module in that course. There was a whole module in there, and believe it or not, I actually did a stand-up set at an actual club. I was part of a course at Middlesex University, their drama theatre studies course, and their comedy module involved you obviously studying various different sets and things like that, and but learning the techniques of comedy and all that sort of stuff. And I ended up doing, along with obviously the other students in there, we had a guy who ran, I don't know if he still does it, but at the time he ran the comedy club in Crouch End.
Okay.
Quite a famous one, which I've seen a lot of people have performed at. And it was 3 nights there, and I did one set, and it went better than I expected to. I sent my tape along to BBC New Talent for like 2022 that year, and actually got into the heats.
Wow, so, that's awesome.
So I've done 3 stand-up gigs in my time. It was the one that got taped, the one I did for the heats, and one in between, which was in the local area, because I suddenly thought, I've not actually done any stand-up in front of a proper audience yet, so I really need to do that. It wasn't really a proper audience that I did it in. It was sort of, I was in between, I was the interval act between a set of this acoustic duo that were doing some music, and I went on there and people did not want to watch stand-up. So yeah, and what I was doing wasn't good enough anyway. So I hold my hands up to that. It wasn't a
How
good
long
set.
was the set?
Oh, it was about. It gave me half an hour.
Ooh, what? This was
Yeah,
like.
I was like
Okay, so just to get this, so you did the thing that was recorded. How long was that?
10 minutes.
And then you had half an hour, Dave.
Yeah, it gave me half an
Oof.
hour, and I was
Wow.
like, obviously being completely, utterly naive to the whole thing. I wasn't really aware that that wasn't really viable and
Yeah.
doable, really. No, I did as much as I could. I think I got to about like 15 or 20 minutes before I sort of gave up the ghost, and well, I gave the ghost halfway through, in fact, and sort of went off. And the guy came over with a beer in his pint that and hadn't sweat. It's all right, we'll sort out. And the guys who actually were doing the acoustic set actually came over and sorted out their equipment and turned me up and all that sort of stuff. And I think some people were like, "Oh, he's back! Yay! He's okay. We can hear him," or something like that.
Wow.
And after I got back on there, it went a bit better.
Yeah.
But even I knew I was just like, "This is not good. I'm just going to stop here." I still got paid somehow. I still got paid some money for it. It wasn't I think because he kept plying me with beers. I think he took that out of the pay. But anyway, but yeah, so I ended up doing BBC Heat in the News Moose in Soho.
Yeah.
And a certain person called Nina Conti was part of that heat as well, who went on to win the whole thing with her little monkey puppet thing.
Wow.
So it was quite good fun. So yeah, I've not done stand up since then, but I was always wanting to be part of like the local sort of theatre scene and all that sort of stuff. And there was some guys that were doing improv. There was a guy that Lee, who runs the Laughter Academy now. He was running a night at the time called Scared Scriptless, and there was a little group of people that were part of that I knew through other people that I was doing some work with. And just here and there, I was always sort of like the guy that was sort of there to sort of watch, and occasionally I'd be in doing like helping with the sound tech and all this sort of other bits and pieces.
Sure.
But I was never really seen as a performer. If you know what I mean? I wasn't quite polished enough, and I was kind of thought, not quite cool enough to do this and all that sort of stuff. I was never sort of felt like a part of the crowd and that. But fast forward about 15, 16 years later, after doing lots of touring and things like that with the Pantos and TIE and all that sort of stuff, I came back to watch with a friend I'd done a local play with, and she told me about this thing that she'd been doing before and wanted to come and see this little showcase of it. So I went along, Laughter Academy, and it was quite good. And they mentioned at the end it was going to be like it was a course, and you could do it for 10 weeks and all that sort of stuff. And it was the two who were teaching it I knew from those previous years. And it was always part of the group that I wasn't sure if I was really part of and all that sort of stuff. But went in, did it. It just met lots and lots of different people, and people that were doing it for different reasons. People who were wanting to do it to polish up their stand up, or they wanted to just have a bit more confidence, or they wanted to just have a bit more ability to speak freely and all that sort of stuff, and not be so reserved. And for me, I knew I could sort of do bits of it because being in Panto, you have to improvise a lot of the time, So I knew I could do like elements of it, but there were parts of it that I had no idea about. So yeah, so as you go in there, you're learning different techniques, different games, different exercises, and the whole thing of just everything. It sounds like a very, very obvious thing, but the whole yes and thing, which is something I wasn't necessarily the best at that time.
Sure.
And there were certain points where the basic of yes and literally is something that I now completely try and live by now, because it's I know, probably sounding a bit like that like Yes Man, that film, but it's not entirely like that. But
yeah. Oh, so hang on. When you say live by, you don't just mean performing, you like in life.
In essence, but obviously, like I say, not to the extent of Yes Man by.
Yeah. You have to say yes.
But yeah, exactly. It's not that situation.
Dave, stand on one leg.
I'm doing it. You can't see, but I'm doing it.
Well, yeah, I take your word on it.
But yeah, no, it's just it sort of has helped it massively helped my confidence going into it. And then, as I say, it's just I've always liked improv as a form anyway, from watching Who's Line and all that sort of stuff from over the years, and wondering how on earth these people do that sort of thing, and then obviously realising along the way that they probably don't do it like that way all the time. Exactly. Well, it's not scripted. It's just about that they can do they can make the mistakes and all that sort of stuff. They just happen to edit that out in the broadcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just found it's such an enlightening sort of like thing. So now I've just been doing the courses pretty steadily since then, and show very 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 slightly just trying to put myself into other groups. So obviously when I saw you guys on Twitter, and I thought it looked quite an interesting different take on the improv show sort of thing, and and look back since then.
Yeah.
So. And since then, I haven't done a lot of stuff in London, but I've tried to put myself out there for stuff. Obviously, things being how they've been over the last few years, that means obviously a lot more stuff online than has been off. But yeah, it's been overly good fun, and it has helped me. I met my fiance through it now, so so it's been very very well helped me.
Yeah, well, evidently she said yes and.
Exactly.
Yeah. Do you think you'll do stand-up again, or do you think that you've... No?
Not a chance.
Not a chance? Dave,
no,
like, if you got into some, like, Heat, the BBC thing, that doesn't sound like that should be the end of the journey.
Yeah, in 2002, it was like... but no, I find it so... I think I'm sort of the opposite of a lot of comedian sort of types, because I think a lot of comedians. I did a show recently with a guy called Ross McGrain, who's a local comedian. He's host of a breakfast show on Radio Essex, and with one of my improv teachers, John Oates, and did a show with him recently. And it was like a stand-up show. So people come along to do. They have 3 stand-ups in the first half, and the second half is improv. And they have a guest in to do the improv, which in that case was me, and I'll be doing the improv with the host and 2 of the stand-ups. And he always says he thinks that improv is a bit... Can I swear on here?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, he thinks it's a bit wank. That's how he says it. He does it, yeah. And he does it well. Yeah. But he's never sort of like, he's never into the character stuff or the scene stuff. He'll like, if he finds something utterly bizarre, he'll call it out and all that sort of stuff. And, as a stand-up would do. But he's very like established as a stand-up. But he doesn't necessarily think that improv's the best sort of form for him or anything like that. Sure. Whereas I'm the opposite. I'm totally like, I find I am better at just coming out with stuff and getting it done in that one burst than writing stuff down and going over it and thinking, is this funny? Is this funny? I don't have the confidence to do that. I will always be my worst enemy with that sort of thing. Just getting like the material down back then for that university performance was just so daunting, and most of it actually ended up coming out of a conversation I had with somebody just randomly, and they just said, "This is stuff you need to actually write down." I'm like, "Yes, you're right. I need to remember this," and it ended up being okay. But the idea of just writing stuff down and trying to make it funny, it's just a weird thing for me.
Yeah, like I like stand up, but and I've done stand up a few times, but again, I find like with improv, it sounds like the lazy thing. Oh, I don't want to put in all this and this to this, but like often you'll get a set and it'll be like 15 minutes, or you'll get 7 minutes and something. It's like, God, that like I worked on that for a month for those like 7 minutes or something. And then once they come and go, this is why if you're going to do it, I think you have to super commit to like doing an awful lot of it, and then you learn and rewrite stuff and everything like that. Whereas the great thing with improv is you can like throw yourself into it. Something which, and you could tell me if you find this or not, but so many people who I've done improv with or speak to about improv will say after a show, straight after, they're like, yeah, what happened in the show? Because you're just going through it, like, and you get to the end of it, and you're like, oh yeah, and this then happened, and who was in that scene? And you just kind of like just go with the flow, and loads of magic happens on the stage, and it is a bit of a whirlwind, and it's very different from how. And like, it doesn't mean that you can't do improv within stand-up or riff off the audience and stuff like that, and I love that, and that's part of the fun of emceeing an improv show. Has that element of stand-up to it, but just being able to like, throw something at me and I'm gonna bounce off of that now. And I think there's like this psychology where the audience, because they know you're making it up, if they thought it was scripted, Like, if they thought an improv show was actually that you intended to do this and you rehearsed it for weeks, they'd be like, this is nonsense. But because they know that you're just winging it, I think just like on some level, they just appreciate and find it funny that, oh, they're just going for it kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's a sort of beauty in that with the improv. It's the whole thing of like it's fun to fail, and failing is wrong and strong, and all
Yeah.
that sort of stuff. It comes to like the shows we did at Cockpit,
Yeah.
and there obviously there are some games that I'm more averse to doing than I would do with others. But there was I think the one that got put up on YouTube recently was the first time I ever attempted a rap battle
Right.
thing, and I think that when we were going to do it another show, I won't say who it was, but I think a member of the group was kind of like, "Oh, I think you should have the people that can really do it that need to do those particular bits." But I think there's a real beauty in just like letting people find their rhythm in a game or a show that they're not necessarily familiar with or is not their strongest bit. But because something can really flourish from that, you can see people like building up on
Yeah.
that. I mean, I am not. I'll defend my sort of rap battling. It won't. If anyone's watching it on the YouTube channel, going, "Oh, we must be quite good," and watch it back. No, I'm not good at it. It's not like I suddenly came out and I was suddenly the next real Slim Shady.
Yeah.
But I was proud of myself for doing those ones
Yeah.
because it wasn't my comfort zone at all. But I came out with some decent stuff for me. I thought I was happy with how I did and all that sort of stuff, and it can only sort of get better from that point. So I think people just go, oh, you should have people who can do it. I think there's a certain
Well, do you know,
something.
if you watch Whose Lines It Anyway over the years, Colin Mockery was terrible at all of the singing games on the UK version. And in like the first season or two of the American version, he was terrible. Like his big thing would be that, oh, I'm about to sing and now I'll faint just to not sing. And like nowadays, he's one of the funniest ones to watch do the singing games. And there is a little bit, just like with all improv, it's a little bit of a baptism by fire kind of thing because you throw yourself into it, and it's great. Obviously, for the singing games, if you are like a Wayne Brady or someone Josie Lawrence or something, that's it's like, oh wow, you're going to sound great or whatever. I don't think I can sing at all, basically, but like I think I can rhyme enough so that I'll do it, and hopefully by the end, people will just be like, well, he went for it, if nothing else.
Going back to James Little, who you mentioned earlier, was,
Yeah.
so even though I didn't hear of a stream improv through him, I obviously suddenly realising he was part of it. I was like, oh, you're part of this group. I'm going to do some stuff with him soon.
Yeah.
I did a workshop last year, or was it last year? Yeah, it was last year. With a group he's also involved with called Improv, who was run by Lisa Lynn, who's amazing.
Sure.
And she did a workshop, and she brought James and a couple of other regulars for Improv to do this stuff at Caddy's in Southend, and I just did some stuff. And again, it's just like learning the sort of like the various sort of techniques of how to do that, the structure of your song. You do this line, then you go in a rhyming structure of A, B, B, A, or whatever it happens to be. And then sort of coming around to doing, like at the end of the workshop, we do a couple of bits there. Then they did a show for us, and a bunch of people came in as an audience to watch it. And then they did like a first half of like a show, and then the next half was a jam. So anyone who'd been doing the workshop during the day could come in and do whatever. They'd say, "Oh, can we have two people up for this one?" And so I'd go up with other people doing a rap thing about a washing machine or whatever it was, a photocopier or whatever it happened to be. And then other group people come up and do all the stuff that we've been doing during the day. And I ended up doing a solo in the end with the whole sort of cast around me doing the various bits around me, doing the rhythm and the bass and the structure and all that sort of stuff. And it wasn't amazing, but it was still something for my own confidence to sort of go up there and do a solo about this particular situation. I forget what it was, but but again, it's just getting out of your comfort zone and finding that thing that you might end up being good at. And if you're not good at it, it doesn't matter because it's improvisation. So people are going to understand that you're making it up and it's not going to be utterly polished.
Yeah.
And if it's a little bit rubbish, it doesn't really matter because that's the whole point of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, one thing when it comes to like strengths, and again, tell me if you agree with this or if this is if it's just my opinion. One of the things has always struck me that I feel is more of something which I feel like Dave is going to be good at this generally is like especially on extreme improv when we do games where you're given like a well-known character or you have to do an impression. It feels like there's quite like obviously not everyone can do everyone, but there's quite a few people where it's like you get good detail or you can. I'd say it's fair to say that you quite like impressions and you do good voices and stuff like this quite well. Would you agree with that?
I think I'm okay.
Right, okay, you can be modest, Dave, but like, I think it's fair. There's definitely some that you can lean into.
Yeah, there's some stuff. There's some stuff on my YouTube. If anyone wants to see my YouTube channel, I did a few videos last year of impersonation videos of people. But the material I was reading was customer reviews of things on sites like Ocado or things like that, where they're reviewing just banal things like biscuits or things like that, and decided to do them in voices. And there's that thing of just finding little like hints of an accent or things like that. So like for whatever reason that show I was just mentioning with the rap battle, I ended up having to do Tony Blair. I think doing a roast.
Yeah, sure.
And bizarrely enough, I had to beat Tony Blair on like two other shows after that as well. There was like I think the 2 weekends after that one, I did a Scared Scriptless with Lee, who I mentioned earlier, and also with Ty Campbell, London improviser, and Wasuki Webster.
Cool.
Amazing opportunity to do that. And just happened to be in a duo scene with Suki, and we're doing New Choice, and one of the new choices ended up being like just new choice was Tony Blair. I ended up doing Tony Blair again in that scene. I was like, why am I doing Tony Blair everywhere? Yeah. But it's that thing of just finding little nuances. So his thing of being totally over the top, and then pauses every so often that get a bit longer, and then a bit longer after that, and all that.
Yeah, but also it's the physicality. Like instantly, Tony Blair. It's like the hands. It's like everything about it.
Hands and things like that. Whereas like Gollum or something like that is just like it's just the lowest sort of like thing, jumping up and down, and other things like that. But I can't keep up with modern like celebrity stuff though, because I think that the reason I sort of stopped doing them for a little while, apart from just decreasing confidence in my abilities, but apart from that, it was just like I think a lot of my impersonations now are like not very relevant to things anymore. Like my best impression is Victor Meldrew, for God's sake. I mean, how long's it been since they've been on there?
Do you know what? Legitimately, I had a conversation about One Foot in the Grave earlier today. About the Polish sausage and polish and whatever the gag was at the time. But yeah, so that was in my conversation today, Dave. So it would have worked on me. But yeah, like I know what you mean. It's just like, again, if I'm teaching or just like around younger people, I do like, and it's like it's weird, but we're not old, Dave. We're not old. But there is just like this element where they'll like say about someone, I'm like, who's that? And they're like, they're a YouTuber. I'm like, okay. I was like, yeah, it's like
they get the list of like the latest celebrities are going to be on I'm a Celebrity or Strictly Come Dancing or something, and they go, "Oh, who's this one?" It's like, they're a YouTube star.
Yeah, they're an influencer.
Don't get me started on that.
Yeah.
Oh god,
it's like
influencer or a thing.
So it's like, what would I seen them in? Nothing. It's like, well, if you watch their channel on Twitch, it's like, no, I'm not going to do that.
It's not like they're going to have anything like, at least with like when you're impersonating someone that we're sort of more familiar with, as opposed to those people that are on there. What's their sort of thing that you're going to latch onto in terms of verbal and things like that?
Yeah.
They're just talking endlessly, or they're just playing a game, and every now and then they'll say something. They're playing the game. If someone's playing a game on Twitch, they're just like, okay, I've got to do this bit now. All right. So what do we do here? Like,
oh, Dave, that's their catchphrase. That's their catchphrase. Oh, that bit there. That bit there.
That's it. That bit there. No. Yeah, well, what do we do here, guys? Oh, guys, we're gonna do this. We're gonna do that.
Guys. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's absolutely. It's the. But I think
that's your catchphrase, Dave. There we go. We've established it. You're absolutely. If you were a wrestler, you'd be absolutely Dave.
I was going to say bring back the old Channel 4 sketch show from the late 80s. Absolutely, that'd be great.
Oh, I don't remember that.
It was. I discovered that in lockdown. There's loads of stuff I discovered during lockdown that was stuff that I should have known. But it was like I think mostly a Scottish show, but it was really funny. What was I going to say? Yeah, the only thing sort of like modern stuff I've watched recently is like Married at First Sight UK and things like that, where it's where you got these sort of just people that are I don't know, just these strange like bunch of people that just want to be on TV in some form or fashion. But that's the only sort of recent stuff I can sort of say. Or if you're going to say, can you be so and so from Married at First Sight, and I'll just put on like a Scouse accent or whatever it is. Things like that. And I'll the only thing you need to do is like if you know where they're from, like say I forget the guy's name, but one of the guys that was on there is from Liverpool. He was quite a grating personality in certain ways. But him and most of the other people on there, the basic thing, this is a catchphrase for a lot of people in like I find on reality shows in particular, is "I'm just speaking my truth."
Yeah.
That's a phrase that bugs the hell out of me.
Yeah.
Speaking my truth basically means, what's the other way of saying it? Sort of like, I'm just being honest.
Yeah.
Like, you can be honest, but not utterly rude
or
at the same time.
It is what it is another one.
It is what it is.
It is what it is.
I am what I am.
Yeah. It's my journey and all these kind of things, stuff like that, you know. Okay, well, I was about to say something based off of... Oh, yes, no, I said, like, I feel like at some point we've gone an hour, Dave, without... other than briefly mentioning professional wrestling, which is a record for us. But, okay, so just to briefly get something on this at least, have you... Okay, so I'm going to ask the bold question here. You've done performing. Did you ever consider getting into wrestling? Because you are a massive wrestling fan after all.
No, because I just knew the physical sort of exertion part of it.
Not commentator, manager, anything? Photographer,
I don't know.
anything?
A what, sorry?
Photographer, anything. Just
Photographer, sorry.
What did you think I said?
I didn't hear what he said.
Okay.
I just heard far at the end. I was like, what did he say?
Yeah, okay.
No, I think when I was like growing up watching obviously the stuff on Sky and everything like that, I think I fancied myself as a commentator. Sometimes I turn the music, the volume down and commentate and all that sort of stuff on what was going on and things like that. But I don't know. It's one of those things where I think if it was a manager sort of situation, it'd be okay. But again, I think any of those sort of things, you've got to have some sort of form of training. I'm just scared of getting hurt.
Yeah,
I am. I'm just total weed in that thing. There was thing I think you've mentioned to me before that you read it, but when I started doing sort of blogs on the reg, there was one my second or third blog was about my first ever professional acting job, and it was for a group called White Horse Theatre in Germany, and the first thing we ever did on there, we do 3 shows for different like school ages, and in Germany they have different sort of like lots of age ranges and things like that, and they start school very early in Germany, I've got to say.
Wow.
But we were doing all three of them in different times on this day, in this first day. So we did the younger audience show first, that was fine. Then we got to the second one, it was a little bit more sort of physical theatre sort of style stuff. And so the first bit we had to do, we had this sort of massive sort of like wooden trunk on the stage that obviously had things in, but we were using it as a platform and various things for it. And one of the things we were doing in the first bit was my character, I was the main character in that one, and this is my life. Day 1, my birth. So we enact my birth. And we do it in a bit of a weird way. So one of the girls stood on top of the box and things like that. I was sitting on the box, at the back end of the box. And she sort of stood over me, and the other 2 actors grabbed my legs and pulled me through. Yeah. I'm supposed to like go through, and I do a baby cry at the end of it, and like that. On this particular first day, they misjudged their strength ever so slightly and pulled me fully off the box. And in the split second, I suddenly think, am I going to do a flat back bump here? Yeah. I have to do something flat back. So I'm just like, in the split second, I go, okay, I think that's how they do it. So I put my arms out, and landed and kept my head up like this.
Yeah.
And so I knew to do that at least, because the stage we were on was full on concrete. Thankfully, though, there was an extended part they put on there to do the actual stage, which was wooden. So it was a wooden pallet sort of situation. So luckily, I landed on the wood rather than the concrete. And because I landed flat, I was winded for a moment.
Wow.
Day 2, the thing, or whatever it was, and we just carried on. And because I managed to absorb it all. So apart from that particular bit, I never ever want to take a bump in a wrestling ring.
Yeah.
But no, I think there was. I used to like go to shows fairly regularly over here, like when the sort of like the Brit wrestling boom sort of started, and that's a bit of a spat on term nowadays, I think. So you go to like shows like Progress and Rev Pro and things like that fairly regularly, and sort of see various shows. But there was nothing in there that sort of made me think, oh, I want to give this a go and train. And fair play to anyone who does like get the inspiration to do that. And there's a few people I know that are wrestlers and things like that do it. And you think, fair play. You want to get on and do it, and you're able to do it. And that's great. But I just know that the first minute I'd be winded. It'd be ridiculous.
Do you know, I was going to comment that we've had at least 2 stories in this podcast about you getting winded, which is a weird thing to actually come up.
Yeah, that's it. That's my career done.
You know.
But no, I think commentary or ring announcer. I think I wouldn't mind doing it.
Ring announcer would be quite cool. Or like, have you ever like thought that I could be the booker?
I was thinking about this the other day because there was a point where, let's say I've watched wrestling consistently since like early 90s, like 91. I think 1991 was when I started watching it like proper.
Yeah.
And I think I had a little bit of a lull during like college years and university years and things like that. For availability, because it wasn't like it is now. You can just watch anything online.
Yeah.
And 2, there was a few bits. I think in 1997, I think. Towards the end of my A-level sort of years, obviously concentrating a lot on that. But also, I think I just forgot WrestleMania was on.
Wow.
I watched Raw. I was like, oh yeah, I completely forgot to watch WrestleMania. That was bizarre. And I was like, oh my, I must be lagging in my fandom here if I'm forgetting it's on.
Yeah.
And things like that. And I think like there was one like show. I think I remember watching a Rock versus Mankind match, and I think that was like maybe their first one that they've had on pay-per-view, but when it wasn't even, it was just Rocky Maivia, I think. And I think I was getting a bit bored by the match and things like that, and then they did a move, and I think went up like his finish was going to be like the top rope crossbody, and then Mankind rolled it over into a mandible claw. And I think I'd called that like moment. When we started going up there, I thought I was going to count that for the mandible claw, and it did. And I think in since I think I've like read like retro reviews and things like that since then. I've been saying what an amazing finish this was. This is incredible. This is amazing. Like a bit of a boring match, but the finish was absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
And I thought. I called that when it happened, and I was like, oh, maybe I did have maybe I would have had a brain for this sort of thing, or just maybe not booking entirely things, but maybe coming up with little nuggets of finishes and things like that. But again, it's just imagination. Again, it's that going back to stand up. I just putting things down, writing it down, and I would just be second guessing myself all the time with stuff like that.
I like back in the day, like when I was younger. Well, it was WCW to give the example. Like when WCW was like a year or 2 before they went out of business, and like they started losing the ratings. Like I was so pro Bret Hart. Like even the logo is the Bret Hart colours, as you'll see there. But like for ones listening, the Slam Jam logo popped up behind me, and it was the colours of Bret Hart. And if you're suddenly like, yeah, I've been listening this whole time, don't really get wrestling. Well, such is life. But
We've left it to the end.
Yeah, I've left it to the end. So Bret Hart was like out of WWE, and I was like, Vince screwed Bret, and I was like, he's in WCW now. I wanted WCW to be good, and it was like as soon as Bret went there, like they started failing. So I don't know what that says about anything, but the thing was, I was like, well, this is how WCW needs to rebook it, and I'd look at like any Nitro or Thunder, and I'd say if they had these wrestlers at the building, how would have I rebooked it to be a better show? And I was doing this, and I'd be telling my family, and they'd in the end be like, David, can you imagine all these big guys listening to what you've got to say? And I was like, don't crush my dreams here. You know, I was like, these shows were, no pun intended, these were dynamite shows. They were like, they would have been like, great. I'd been like, you've got this wrestler here, they're going to have like a 5-star match. But
did you ever do like the E-Feds or anything like that?
I didn't. Like my family didn't get the internet probably until I don't know, like probably about mid-noughties. So like like I'd use it at the library and at college and stuff like this. But it was probably, I can't remember what year, 2004, 2005, or a little. We definitely got it by 2005, but maybe I may have just about not really done that, and then I was at drama school and stuff, and so yeah.
Because I remember that one of the guys that used to run Progress, a guy called Jim Smallman, who's a comedian, used to be a stand-up comedian himself. He was he talked to various like podcasts and things like that about the fact that he was part of the EFEDs and things like that. Apparently, he was like one of the top EFED guys and things like that. He like was always writing like all these bizarre like these angles and speeches and all that sort of stuff, and writing things out, scripting things out, and all that sort of stuff. I don't know what his handle was, but he was quite well known. Apparently, people were after the fact would be going, "Oh my God, you're thinking. I remember reading your stuff." And and that's obviously he went on from that to doing NXT UK and then NXT now. I think he's one of the writers for that now. So
wow,
he's going to sort of like do stuff like that. So it's a weird little thing how like little passions can just like push you through like to where you want to go and all that sort of stuff. But it's something that I don't know, just sort of in later stages of a life that I'm finding middle stages of life, hopefully. But stages of life I'm finding myself in now, things like that. Just thinking, that guy. I always think of that guy, and I was thinking, he's like just only just slightly older than me, like he's there. But just let each other see at the end of the day,
Yeah. Everyone's journey. I wish I could remember exactly what you said. These people say nowadays about their journey, or whatever.
Yeah. That's all. Everyone gets to their destination for a reason.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't know. There's probably something to that. Or there isn't, and it sounds nice if it makes sense. But
I think saying there's probably something to that. It's just like that little grain of hope where you're thinking there might be something here. Maybe we'll there in the end. But who knows? You never know. Just hope that it doesn't like come to a crashing halt and a bit of disappointment at the end of the day.
Jesus, like Dave, I was mindful of the time, and I was like, I can't end it on this. Like, I was mindful of the time. I was like, I can't wrap it up now. Okay.
Up and down week, sorry.
No, that's fine. Like, these things happen, of course. Dave, like, do you have like projects coming up? Do you have things either in the immediate future or things that you're looking to next year? Anything you want to plug or like talk about? I
think it's just immediate plans at the moment is just keep being able to keep the heating on. I think at the moment, but there's nothing outside the norm at the moment. As I say, LAPD and Properly hopefully will be back on a regular basis in Paddy's and Southend. I've started potentially doing some hosting for some of the Laughter Academy shows now. Awesome. So I was talking about not doing stand-up again. I might have to in order to try and help myself with that maybe. So hopefully I'll be hosting some shows soon as well as being in them. And that's all, as I say, at the Laughter Academies in Southend. I'm still doing comedy dinner shows, which is like things like 40 Towers and and going back to the stuff that none of the kids know about these days. But if you like retro shows, I can do a mean mazzle. So doing comedy dinner shows quite regularly, which is good. But personal projects, I'm hoping this year at some point to get a bit more motivation, to get more of the impersonation videos that I mentioned earlier off and running on there. Might have to try and learn TikTok, I don't know, but to get that a bit more launched off the ground. Just hopefully just putting out a bit more content and not beating myself up too much about it and all that sort of stuff, and just going with the flow and actually just saying, just give it a go. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, move on to the next thing, and hopefully some more extreme improv shows.
Yeah, awesome, absolutely great, Dave. On that note, let's.
Oh, sorry, DavidAnthonyGreen.com. That's where you can find it all.
Well, no, yeah, I was going to ask you like where can people find and stuff like this. So you have a YouTube channel as well, which I believe is also David Anthony Green is what they have to search.
Well, it's DavidAnthonyGreen.com. All the links to my socials are on there, so you find the YouTube, you find the Twitter, and all that sort of stuff. And personal Twitter is at Degrino.
Degrino, yes. Okay, audience, my name is David Pistansky. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at David Pistansky, spelled Pustansky. Of course, check out www.xstreamed.tv, where you'll find the links to, like, there's over like 100 social media links I've realised that I've got between Slam Jam and Xstreamed and jet lagged and loving it and all this stuff. You can find them all on xstream.tv, but of course Extreme Improv on everything is where you need to look up Extreme Improv. Smash the subscribe button on youtube.com/Extreme Improv. Pow. And yeah, let's wrap that up there. Thank you very much for this, Dave. I've enjoyed it. We'll have to do another one.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully do. Yeah.
Okay, and we are off the air.